Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Snap Material Podcast. Oh my goodness, this might be the earliest we've recorded in a month to get ready for the next season and talk about the previous season. So, hey, I'm your host, Jesse Starcher. Over there's Evan Bevins. Evan, you ready to talk to the mobile game, Marvel Snap, tonight?
Yeah, it's definitely the earliest we've recorded in the year.
And that's the truth. That is the truth. It being January 1st in all of 2024. So, yeah, let's go ahead. We'll get into it. First, we're going to talk about the previous season, which was the Hellfire Gala. Talk about what we ran into, what we saw with some of the new cards there. We'll go over our unlocks, some of the popular decks and strategies that we saw, and maybe we even employed throughout the season.
The X-Men ran into a buzzsaw at the most recent Hellfire Gala, just FYI.
Ooh, oh goodness. That's not good. We will talk about the upcoming season, Planet Hulk. Then we'll also be discussing our top 5 cards that are better in the comics than in Marvel Snap. And then we will be following it up with our battle, because our top 5 actually factors into what we're going to do in our battle, which involves the top 5 and the deck builder. So get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. So let's talk about the Hellfire Gala. First up, that previous season was released December 5th, 2023. Premier card that came with the set was Sebastian Shaw, which was a 3-cost, 4-power card. And when that card permanently gained power, it gained +2 more power.
That power is frankly too good for Sebastian Shaw.
Yes. They're running out of Hellfire-related people to put in there. And granted, Sebastian Shaw, when you think Hellfire Gala or just Hellfire Club, he's up there.
He's supposed to be a big threat.
Right. I remember we talked about how he wasn't.
He is pretty effective in the game, but
yeah. So what'd you run into here with Sebastian Shaw? I know you said you didn't get him, but what was it like playing?
A lot of Silver Surfer, some Ironheart, the occasional Forge, but Silver Surfer was what I saw him with mostly.
Yeah, with me it was Forge and Nova. I think was my expectation.
Oh yeah,
but I saw Nova this morning, where he was out there, and it cost me the game. He was in the middle lane, and I was winning, and then the guy laid out Killmonger on the final turn, and that gave him +1, if I remember correctly. And that gave him that +2, and then it was just enough to put him over the top and win that lane by a point, I think. So he was aggravating.
Really using M'Baku right there.
Yeah, I probably could have. Aggravating, but yeah, wasn't too much of a threat. At least I didn't see him a whole lot, but when I did, he could be used and he could be a threat sometimes, for sure. Oh, yeah. Okay.
You know who I did see a lot?
Who's that?
The Blob.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that's the card that I remember running into quite a bit. People were employing the use of the Blob a lot. And yeah, my notes here were, so just get to recap, everybody. Blob, 6-cost, 4-power card. On reveal, merge your deck into the Blob. And at that point, it gains its total power, plus it can't be moved, which apparently I tried to do that today. I Spider-Man'd him. He did not move. So
Spider-Man threw his back out.
Yeah, he got the heck away, too. How many team-ups in the comics featured the Blob and Taskmaster?
I feel like there should have been at least a couple. They're both kind of work for the highest bidder guys.
Right. You'd think they would have run into each other at some point. But I also put on here versus Shang-Chi, because I was using my Bounce House deck a lot. I'll mention that here later, but I had Shang-Chi in the pocket sometimes, and as soon as Blob hit, if I've got the initiative, I'm going to go ahead and lay out Shang-Chi and get him off the board, because Taskmaster seemed to follow right after that in the next turn.
I started using him a bunch. Oh, hey, I just found, first of all, Google brings up a bunch of Marvel Snap stuff when you search for Blob, Taskmaster, and Marvel. But apparently they did appear together taking on Luke Cage in House of M Avengers #3.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Believe it or not, Taskmaster is a mutant, or at least he was at one point in the comics. Sometimes that can change, depending on movie rights. But,
right.
But yeah, Taskmaster, I believe, was a mutant. So.
All right. Well, yeah. Then it's out there.
I started using Blob a lot. We talked about it a little last time with the combo that you suggested. Wave, Blob, Taskmaster, and Armor. And then every once in a while, I've managed to attack Absorbing Man onto the end for good measure. I ended up, to make sure I had enough raw materials in that deck and give me a backup plan if the Blob didn't go out, I ended up just putting those cards into my Shulkanaut deck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, affectionately known as Balkanaut now.
Balkanauts.
Then I load a Giganto in there and Abomination. And so you got a lot of stuff for the Blob to absorb, or if all those start coming out, you put Magic in there to get a turn 7, then maybe the Blob stays in your hand and Infinite and She-Hulk come out.
That's nice. Very nice.
So I actually just recently won a silver and a gold conquest with that deck.
No kidding. Solid work.
So.
Very nice. All right. Well, are you in the process of doing Infinite, or did you get knocked out?
Yeah, I got knocked out pretty early on in Infinite. I may grab one more ticket before it changes over. Not super pumped about the Thor Hellfire Gala variant, but at this point, it's like, well, may as well try.
Right. All right. Our third card that we're going to talk about is Havoc. 2 costs, 0 power, but after each turn, you lose 1 max energy, and this gains +4 power. And after we had recorded our last show, I wondered if all of our thoughts about this card were correct or if they were wrong.
I think they were mostly wrong.
Okay. I think that may qualify as the card we got the most, was most misunderstood by us. So,
we've misunderstood some cards.
Yes, we have. And what did you end up seeing? What was he doing again?
Basically, to put it simply, he locks the max energy at whatever turn you play him on, because you gain 1 max energy every turn and he takes 1 away. So you play him on turn 4, unless you get a boost, you're not going above 4 energy. So I actually used him for my first successful Mr. Negative deck, really. Or consistently successful. Just had a lot of 0 cost cards, 0 power cards in there. Havoc gives you the potential for some high power on there. I used Darkhawk, Morph, Iron Man. Yeah, the highest power cards in that deck for me are Ravana, Renslayer, Rockslide, and Shang-Chi.
Okay.
So, because most of them start with a 0, but Morph, you never know what he's going to be. Darkhawk can get boosted up pretty well, especially with his buddies Rockslide and Korg in there. And then Iron Man doesn't take a whole lot to get him going. And then with Mr. Negative, Darkhawk, and Shang-Chi, you got Zabu and Ravana. You can get them down to 2 costs. So play Havoc on turn 4, and if you got Ravana out there, then Iron Man, I didn't think it would work that well, but it did pretty well for me. At least until I got into 90, and then I'm back in the low 80s now. But
you touched greatness there for a few.
yeah, that and Balkanaut.
Right.
I tried Havoc with a Surfer deck because you're mostly you don't want a lot more than 3 cost cards in that, so you play him on turn 3 or 4, and he can start building up pretty well, so gives you another avenue.
Well, yeah, you put in here that you got him first try on the Spotlight Cache, and you got Blob on first try as well. That's pretty nice.
I was curious about them, but we'll talk about it. I got my eye on one particular card for next season, so I had to use a few more keys later on, but I'm in pretty good shape to land the whale for next season.
As far as running into Havoc, because I didn't get him, but I ran into him quite a bit, and yeah, he can win a lane pretty easily. He can get up there too. If you got a Shang-Chi in your pocket, that might help you. Mm-hmm. But man, he can get pretty vicious.
I also at one point had somebody Viper Havoc over to me. You sacrifice 1 lane, but you could mess up your opponent by turn 3 or 2 if you get really lucky.
Right. And our 4th and final card for the season, Selene, a 1 power -1 card. On reveal, afflict the lowest power card in each player's hand with -3 power, -3 power here. Yeah, what'd you see there?
Oh, her I had to try a few times. I wasn't sure about that because she was the least intriguing of the cards this season to me. Well, the least intriguing non-Sebastian Shaw card. But I still wanted to try her on an Annihilus deck, and I tossed her right in there, and that's where I saw her a lot, too.
Yeah, same here.
mainly with the Nihilist, because she can even drag down some of your cards. Instead of it being a liability, it's just another bit of garbage to toss on your opponent's side.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of our top 5, a character I like much better in Snap than I do in the comics.
Yeah. There's a couple of them here, probably. Well, of course, you didn't get Sebastian Shaw, so he might go up in your good graces if you ever run into him on Snap.
I've always kind of liked Havoc and the Blob. Blob's the Blob, man.
The Blob's the Blob. Yeah, exactly.
I'm happy he exists.
He's in here.
In the recent era of X-Men, he was the bartender at the Green Lagoon, the happening social place on Krakoa.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we'll talk about the locations. So first was Castle Blackstone. The player winning here gets +1 energy each turn. I didn't get to play this very much when it was featured. This was a location that I was not really too enthused for. It didn't seem like it was going to be a game breaker to me, and I didn't feel the need to play like I was playing with Tarnax 4. So
yeah, well, it's no Tarnax 4.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
It's a nice bonus to get. Sometimes that extra 1 energy can make a big difference. It's not like it's not the raft. When I see the raft, I'm like, okay, well, whatever strategy I was doing, I have to fill up the raft.
Yeah,
because that can make or break you. A little disappointing when you get null and you aren't destroying cards or whatever, but the raft can make or break you. Castle Blackstone, it's worth it to try, but you don't want to disrupt what you're doing. It's not making that big a difference.
Right.
But it can throw a wrinkle in.
And up next, a location that I didn't think was going to matter to me until you reached out. So the next location was White Palace. Copy the highest card in your opponent's hand. And I think, oh man, I wish I could go back and take time and look, see when you sent that to me during the day. I just remember that when you sent me the text that said, was it you that was, or somebody did that with?
No, it was my friend Luke that suggested our red versus green battle last time. He used an Agatha Loki deck, or he had an Agatha Loki deck played on him.
Oh.
So yeah, said he counting on sticking their opponent with Agatha with the White Palace and then getting rid of Agatha on turn 3. Said he must listen to Snap material because Sif was in that deck too. I hadn't thought of Loki as a cure for Agatha as well.
Yeah, I
texted back, well, I know what I'm trying after work.
Yeah, I immediately went and that's all I did. All I did most of the night and during the rest of the day up until I think I had to go to work. I had Agatha in my hand. And of course, changed the title, playing Agatha, and went into this thing like, oh my gosh, I didn't go anywhere. So it did. I was really hoping I would skyrocket. People would just be retreating left and right, but no. And I'll tell you that the White Palace, I think when it's a featured location, I think it's supposed to be 50%. I could be wrong. Maybe it's 30. But regardless, I throw Watcher into my decks when the locations are going on, especially if I have a deck built around that location, so I can go ahead. If turn 2, that location isn't popped up and I can see the third's not going to be the location, I'll retreat. I was retreating. I retreated 8 straight times. I remember counting. I was mad because I was like, this is not the frequency I expected with White Palace. And it really felt like it was not as featured as it should have been. It just didn't seem to pop up a whole lot. A lot of times I didn't get to 8 cubes because those guys got frustrated and were gone by turn 5. Turn 6 rolls around and it's sitting there waiting for somebody to play, and they would leave. But Agatha, of course, I did a combination of the discard deck. I had Loki in there. My favorite interaction was the guy that as soon as it happened, he was like, I don't believe you. And I was like, yes, that's what I wanted. And then shortly after that, he retreated. All of a sudden, I've become a real big jerk. When people would retreat, I would go over and go, what just happened?
He says.
All of a sudden, I would put, what just happened? What just happened? And so, yeah, I apologize to anyone that I upset.
I was using that mostly, too. I threw Black Knight in there in case I could time it so Sif would take down Agatha and then get a 14-point Ebony Blade.
Oh, yes. I think I had Black Knight in mine, too.
And but yeah, the problem is I may have sent you this. I know I sent my friend that suggested it a message. The Agatha Gambit fails if you don't draw Sif. Yeah, the White Palace copied Annihilus into my hand. and my opponent Annihilist over multiple rocks and the Void. And so Agatha, of course, on the final turn is only going to play Agatha.
Right.
Well, I might still have lost, but she could have dropped Annihilus on there and slung everything back at him.
Oh,
there was plenty of stuff she could do, but she didn't
do it. Yeah.
I also sent him a text. Great moments in Agatha. Playing Sunspot on Dark Dimension.
Yeah.
It's almost as good as just dropping him right into Death's Domain.
Yeah, he's useless.
And then his response was, she played so many cards on Rickety Bridge. So many. So yeah, I'm not sure how effective it was, but it was pretty fun.
Oh yeah, that's all I was looking for, was to have fun while it gave me the opportunity to aggravate some other players.
Oh yeah, and here I said I don't expect deep strategy from Agatha, but I would think she could do simple math. I get if she didn't recognize Annihilus was coming on that one. Well, even if I hadn't had Annihilus from the White Palace, I would have known they were setting up an Annihilus play.
Mm-hmm.
So then she moved Nightcrawler immediately and kept leaving power on the board. She did eventually play Sunspot, but then on turn 5, with Vision and Annihilus in the hand, so 7 or 8 points, forget the Annihilus effect, 7 or 8 points, she's like, I'm going to play Black Knight and Colossus.
Yeah, there was a lot of times where I was noticing that she would play a card and leave me with 2 or 3 energy in my hand. I was like, okay, well, Sunspot's going into this deck. I remember starting out with her during the whole White Palace thing. Didn't even think to throw Magic in there, but I thought, oh yeah, I'll go ahead and throw Hela in there. Well, idiot, she's not going to play Hela ever. It took me a few rounds to figure that out. I was like, oh, well, all I need to do now is just grab a bunch of, as long as it's up to 5 power. And Loki does a pretty good job too. Loki's a nice thing to have. I think I was using Quinjet to get the cost down from Loki. I mean, Loki already takes it down 1. And then Quinjet's going to take it down another because that didn't start in your hand.
Right.
And I think I had a collector out there at one point too. I remember really filling up every single lane. If Loki was able to be played, I could play everything that was in my hand.
Yeah, I even threw Iron Lad in there for extra chances at Sif and Loki.
Yeah. Smart. Thanks a lot for joining us. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for the next installment of Snap Material.